You're listening to Tripod, a podcast produced by Tricycle Creative to help safely navigate creative business owners through the worlds of digital marketing, strategic content creation, and business growth. Host Ross Herosian is a marketing consultant, content creator, and entrepreneur who brings you helpful tips, social media updates, inspiring interviews, and his own unique perspective on how to tell your story and grow your business. So if you're interested in being a better marketer, business owner, or creator, sit back, relax, and let's get pedaling.
Hey everyone, Ross Hero here. You know, it's been a while since I've gone live. I'm going to have to shake the rust off a little bit here as we go live today. But I am super excited because I am bringing in a guest today, Blake Clark of Software Advice. And I am so pumped about talking with him about the thing that so many of you come to me about. Well, hey Ross, do you have a recommendation for this? Hey Ross, have you ever used this? Hey Ross, do you ever use this? Or you don't come to me for that, and I say, have you ever tried this? And people are like, no, I haven't. And they do, and then they come back to me and they say, whoa, this is amazing. I have made a good part of my career with being somewhat of kind of that fixer, maybe more appropriately, the tinkerer, right? I am always trying new software, new apps, new stuff, right? I am curious. I say this all the time. If you're a creative business owner, you have to be voraciously curious. And a big part of that is finding solutions, finding ways that you can scale your business. And as we live in this modern era, a huge part of that is software. And it's about trying to figure out what exactly can actually help your business. And I get it. It's scary because sometimes you got to plunk down some money. Sometimes you're not exactly sure everything you need. Well, that's exactly where Software Advice comes in. And that is exactly where I now bring in to the show, Blake Clark. How's it going, man?
Ross Hero. What a name.
Morning,
right? You're tailor-made for this. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Ross here only came about because people butcher the last name. So why not just keep it easy, right?
That's true.
So, it's been so long since I've gone live and had a guest that, like I said, it's a little rusty.
Feel special.
But I go back to even when I was meeting with people in person, and I had this, I'm not going to call it nervous tick. I'm going to call it a thoughtful thing that I do before every meeting. I always have a couple Altoids, kind of think about the person you're talking to. I don't want to have that coffee breath. So it's like we're in person.
They're curiously strong.
I want you to know I have fresh breath. That's what I want you to know.
That's great.
Well, why don't we start? We're going to talk about a lot of things today. Yeah. I'm super pumped to have you. Let's start with the basics. What does Software Advice do? And why should creative business owners use it or even know about it?
Yes, great question, Ross.
What a great question.
Look, I'm super happy to be here. I'm honored to be kind of your first live guest in a while. My name is Blake Clark. I live in sunny Austin, Texas. It's not sunny today, but I am the general manager for Software Advice, which is a Gartner-owned company, and it's one that I'm really passionate about. So what do we do? So I like to think of Software Advice as a growth accelerator, primarily for small businesses. So our mission, the reason we get up and go to work every day, is to empower organizations, small businesses, to grow faster, primarily by helping them embrace the right software and technology solutions like you just talked about. So we want to be a trusted partner for small businesses. We really want to help you grow. That's the main focus of the business. So the way I think about it is small business owners wear a lot of different hats, right? Ross, you run a business yourself. And so, your full-time job is not sitting there trying to figure out what software or services you need to run your business. Take perhaps someone who owns a restaurant and her day job is running the restaurant. It's not actually figuring out, doing big deep dive research on what software she needs to run the business. That's where Software Advice comes in. So the core of our experience is we will connect small businesses to one of our industry-specific advisors. These are real human beings. They sit here in Austin, Texas. They have really deep understanding of what the software selection process is like. And the centerpiece of our business is a one-on-one conversation with an advisor. And that advisor is going to listen to a small business, understand what that specific needs are, what your budget is, and then craft a short list of recommendations that are tailor-made for you, your needs, and your business. And then ultimately, it's really up to you to evaluate from that short list which solution is going to make your business grow. But we want to be that trusted partner. So we do that in usually 15 minutes or less. And if we do our job well, we will make some really great matches for you, save you a ton of time. But I think more importantly than that, just give you confidence that the solutions you're going to choose are going to work for your business, going to help you grow, and you're going to get back to your day job as a business owner.
Do you know what I love about that is that you talk to an actual person?
Yeah.
In kind of specialized verticals, categories, that kind of thing. Is that kind of how it operates, where you have subject matter, for lack of a better word, or software matter experts in areas? Is that kind of how it functions?
That is exactly right. And I'll talk about that here in a moment, but I think you're right. Like what I love about it is even in this digital age, and we're a very digital business, we have a really rich set of resources on our website to help you understand a software market and research some products. But there's really nothing that can really take the place of a conversation with a person who has a deep knowledge set around the problem you're trying to solve. I talk about the name, which some people go, software advice. Like that's kind of direct to the point, maybe a little boring. But I say I actually love it because if you think about the word advice, we're not software information, we're not software data, we're software advice. And a lot of times when you think about any time in your life when you have sought out advice, typically that's going to come from a person. You want to talk to someone. And so, yeah, we do organize around specific verticals, different types of software typically. So that's because we want our advisors to have a really deep knowledge set around the software that they are going to be talking to software buyers about and business owners. We want them to just have that really deep level of understanding so that we can make the best recommendations to our buyers. So yes, we are very vertically focused.
And I understand why you go this route, but there's so many things out there that are algorithmic, right? Or like, we've all seen the comparison table, right? We've all seen the table full of options, and that helps to give some level of clarity. But you're 100% right. To your point, like when you go for advice, you are seeking out a human, a person. I'm going to tell you how those tables always work. Yeah, they get you a little further along, but I don't know if you're like, I like to think that many people are like me. And it's like, there's always the one thing or a couple of things where you're like, this table's not answering for me. This algorithm choice is not quite answering for me. And I think this is a huge reason why I can even speak to my own experience on YouTube, but like the biggest thing on YouTube is the how-tos or the people who are looking for walkthroughs and tutorials because it's being done by a person.
Right.
My most popular video on my channel is a full breakdown walkthrough of two very popular online learning platforms. And I mean, it is bananas. It is on fire. I can ascribe to it probably over 30 subscribers, thousands of views. People love to get advice and feedback and help from actual people.
It probably comes as no surprise to you that Instagram is the favorite social media platform among creative business owners. Instagram also continues to find new and interesting ways for small businesses to generate revenue, promote their products, their service, their expertise. But Instagram does have a major limitation: external links. They won't work in your captions, and you can only use them in stories if you have a large follower count. Sure, they give you link in bio, but that's just one link. Problem solved with Solo.to. Solo.to is one bio link for everything. When you create a Solo.to account, you can showcase tons of links for your business. And if you're a creator like me, you can even embed music, videos, and podcasts right there on Instagram from your favorite platforms. Want to see Solo.to in action? Head on over to Tricycle Creative's Instagram account @HelloTricycle and click the link in our bio. Solo.to offers a free plan to get you started, and you can upgrade for as little as $1 a month. Use the referral link in this episode's description and in the show notes, and you can save 10% off any upgrade package within 48 hours of signing up. Solo.to. It's one bio link for everything.
On that note, do I still need to tell people that we experienced a pandemic in the past year? I'm not really sure. I mean, people probably haven't heard it enough. That's the thing, is they don't know that we've been in it. So let me just let people know. We've had this weird, terrible pandemic this past year. So I would be very curious, what categories of software have you seen this like explosive growth in?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's, I'll probably hit this theme a lot today. I really feel like the world changed when the pandemic hit. And while I'm very optimistic that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, there will be an economic recovery, I think a lot of the sort of customer behavioral changes are here to stay. And so it was just a watershed moment for us. And I think just in terms of software adoption. So, we did some research that showed just, over 80% of small businesses adopted new software just in 2020, which is a really high number, especially for small businesses that don't always have necessarily major budget for investing in software. But we saw some explosions in categories like telehealth, 10, 20x what that was. And I think that was because before the pandemic, people be like, well, I'm going to go see a doctor. Like, I'm not feeling well. I want this doctor to actually be able to examine me. And I don't, the telehealth thing. And overnight, that became like the predominant way that we start like a medical evaluation. And I don't think that's going to change. I think that will remain. So telehealth was huge. Learning management, which you just talked about, like schools, universities, even businesses that have like educational components to their business had to figure out like super fast, how do I actually deliver this experience digitally? E-commerce delivery systems, retail is obviously a big category for small businesses. And we had businesses trying to figure out, I remember a butcher shop here in Austin that was, really popular business that prior to the pandemic really did nothing online, no sort of pre-orders, no delivery. And they sort of made that transition in, a matter of days or weeks. So that was huge. Even software that kind of cuts across categories for startups and new businesses, maybe somewhat counterintuitive, but there's been a lot of businesses started during the pandemic. And so it's a lot of those categories that have just been dramatically impacted by pandemic behavior. And I think it's going to be here to stay. So it was really a challenge, but it was a lot of fun to just see some of these businesses. I keep thinking of this idea of gradually, then suddenly. I think it's an Ernest Hemingway of how you go broke. You gradually and suddenly.
We're going to flip this. We're going to be more obvious, and it's gradually and so how you start your business. And you're right. It's been very interesting during the pandemic that I think that you have probably seen this maybe not explosion, but I'd be very curious to look back in some research a year out of people starting businesses,
right?
Entrepreneurial things, whether they are side hustles, whether they are, because we saw a lot of people that also got unfortunately laid off from jobs, and the job market also took a major hit. So if you're in that position and you've been sitting on starting something, I think a lot of people said to themselves, why not now?
Yeah.
The job market sucks. I'm out of work. And, let's start that thing that I've been sitting on. And I think to your point, that's probably ushered in those things that cut across categories when it comes to starting a business. Things like, I just had a conversation this week with a client about like proposal software, right? And tools, these things that, for sending them out and getting receiving payments, right? That is kind of the e-commerce thing, that stuff I am sure in the past year saw a massive spike because A, existing businesses needed to have it.
Yep.
And then B, probably a somewhat of a flood of the market of people starting that, again, side hustle, full-time thing, whatever it is that they've been sitting on for so long. Because starting a business, your own business, is scary, but it's almost like, I almost compare it to like when you start sliding on ice in a car. It's like just steer into the skid, or and it's just like that's how you get out of it. It's like, listen, this world is bonkers. This business idea I've always thought of it as bonkers. I've hesitated, but let's do it. Let's roll with it. Maybe on that note, do you want to talk just real quick about your background? Because you've had quite a diverse background. I think it's just a little important for some context.
Yeah. I feel like when I look at my career, Ross, I think about, in my background, I always think about a compass versus a map. And what I mean by that is a map is typically used when you're at point A and there is a point B you're trying to get to. So you use a map that says, in order to get to this specific destination point, go left, go right, follow the map. Whereas a compass is actually about just direction. It says, like, I need to go north, and the compass can tell me that I'm in the right direction. There may not actually be a destination point or a specific, place that you're heading. And for good or bad, that's kind of how my background has gone. Actually, if you go way back, my degree is in finance, which I feel like I use a lot, but I don't work in finance. I went to Texas A&M, so any Ags out there, all the Aggie jokes are true. They're all true. But I have a degree.
I don't know any of them, if that's any consolation, so I can neither confirm nor deny.
And I started in finance and I enjoyed it, but then I found my way into digital product management at a startup, 20 years ago. And I didn't even really know what product management was at the time. It was still a really new discipline. But what I loved about it is, it was ultimately about problem solving. Sometimes it's really hard if you're in the product management world to describe what you do. But I would basically say it's problem solving. It's figuring out the users, the target I'm trying to reach, what are their problems? And then how can I actually design something that's going to solve it in a meaningful way? And from there, it just kind of, I worked in a lot of different businesses. I've worked in big Fortune 500 type businesses. I've worked in small startups. I've worked in pure, digital pure plays, and spent a good amount of time in travel. And throughout so much of that, there was just, to me, a focus on that idea of problem solving. And I had a chance to take this general management role, the GM role with Software Advice. And I just jumped at it, one, because I loved the mission of the company, love what they do. And there's something about being able to kind of have involvement in lots of different areas, but always centered on that idea of problem solving. And so it's been really fun, especially the last year has obviously been a huge challenge for all of us. I mean, really, really trying times for us in our communities, in our country, in the world. But I feel like small businesses were just, some of the things you mentioned, just severely impacted by COVID, by the shutdowns and just everything else. And so I felt just, real passion around doing what we can to get businesses up and growing and thriving again. And I always say that in 2021, there's a lot in our communities that we sort of disagree on, but I think we all agree that thriving local small businesses is great for our communities. I mentioned I live in Austin. That's 80% of what I love about this town is the small businesses that just make it unique. And so, that's kind of my background, has been kind of walking through open doors and heading in a general direction, but not necessarily having a specific map in mind.
We're very alike in that way. I'm not going to talk about my background. Most people maybe know that, but I love that compass versus a map? Because I feel like I've never been able to succinctly talk about my path, and I feel like you nailed it. And I wanted to bring that whole thing up to give some context to my next question, which is, what's the worst advice that you see or hear kind of being dispensed in the world?
That's a great question. The worst advice, there's, I kind of think about, I go back to, I said earlier that I felt like the world changed. It was a watershed moment that it's not going to go back. And I don't know that this advice is necessarily super prevalent right now, but I still feel like it's out there. Or this line of thinking that goes, if you're running a business, there's going to, like, the pandemic will eventually go away. And I believe that we will defeat this thing. And then life is going to sort of go back to how it was. I don't actually believe that. So yes, I think we'll beat the pandemic. Yes, I think that the economy will recover. But I think if you're in a business and you're thinking about what does this all mean for my go forward strategy, I think you have to say, like, it's never going to go back exactly how it was. And so
I had a conversation with a client during this time, and we were talking about, it was very early on, but it was talking about like creating and building and promoting a digital side of their business. Right, which did not previously exist, really. And he says to me, well, what happens when the pandemic ends? Which, let me also put a note, when we're having this conversation, like, that's got to be like 2 months, right?
Yeah.
Right, sure,
Right.
okay.
Right.
What happens when the pandemic ends? And then I got all these people online, and then my store opens.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, you have a great problem on your hands in that you now have 2 revenue streams. Like,
Right.
What a great problem to have. I think people have been, and I don't know how many, as we sit here now on month whatever, April, so like 13 of the pandemic, I guess, where I don't know how many more people are white knuckling it, like just holding on and still surviving, thinking that, like, we're just going to wait it out.
Yeah.
And it's just wait it out till we get back to the way it was.
Right.
Because I even think about my own behavior now. Curbside pickup.
No doubt.
Delivery. I just, why would you then take those things away?
I don't know. I don't know. And it also makes me think about, to that point, that a lot of times we think about, obviously, our ability to think about the future is based on the fact that the past is in some way predictive of the future. And while that may be broadly true, there are times where it isn't. So there's a lot of things like, in telehealth and some of these other markets where it was popular and growing, but there were a lot of people that were like, yeah, we tried that. Like, it didn't work. People didn't really want it. And so they might go, I don't know that people are going to want it now. But you have these events that happen that so rapidly advance behavior. It goes back to that gradually then suddenly, that sometimes there's advice that, like, if you've tried things in the past and they didn't work, then you shouldn't try them again. And the reality is it's a very different environment right now for trying some of those things. Like, I remember one of my early jobs, I was at a mobile software company, and we were basically making software. This is pre-iPhone. So we were making software for PDAs, personal digital assistants, like Palm Pilot, handspring visors. And
love it.
Yeah, and in our mind, it was like, someday everybody's going to have one of these like pocket computers, and it's going to be real slow. And I was there in 2000 to 2004, and it was like the market grows a little bit, clunky devices, and then boom, 2007, the iPhone comes out. And it was like gradually, then suddenly. You look up like a year later, and it's like everyone seems to have one of these devices. And so things that we had tried before on previous
of course they wouldn't have worked.
Yeah,
right?
like,
and also let's talk, to your point, gradually then suddenly, particularly in the tech space, right? Where infrastructure didn't exist, infrastructure that you would need to rely on.
Right.
I go back my time at satellite radio, it was a very similar thing. Like the startup of satellite radio, we were reliant on the satellite coverage. right? Because we were still building out what's called the repeater network. So without getting too engineering, because I would do it a disservice, the satellite sends down the signal and then it's caught by repeaters, and then the repeaters like spread it throughout the area so you get more blanket coverage. I imagine it's the same way how cell phones work. I don't know. I ain't no engineer. But so we didn't have a repeater network established, right? But to your point, gradually, then suddenly, right? Yeah. Satellite radio, when it first came out, you went under a tree and it was like, lost it a little. And even the early portable devices, which I loved and was a ambassador for and championed, it could be comically bad, but it's like, then you fast forward 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and the world is ready. Infrastructure now exists that wasn't there before. And, that whole, there's nothing that drives me crazier than, it's like, well, we tried that and it didn't work.
Right.
Now, that's not to say that I think that there's no value to be put on that. But I think what happens is it's very quickly then thrown out. And I was once told that when it comes to marketing, especially my world, marketing doesn't solve problems. It illuminates them. And that's really, I think, something that I bring to my clients when I talk to them too, is understanding that it's not that you're never going to have an answer, but it's that you are on a constant search for optimization, for updating, for learning, for tweaking. And I think that you have to, when the time came and COVID hit and people who had tried online stuff before, maybe their audience wasn't ready for it. Maybe the infrastructure didn't exist for it. Directly to what you do with software, maybe even the software wasn't that good to support it. Like maybe you had to build your own custom solution, and God knows that was probably a nightmare and cost prohibitive. But now software exists, infrastructure exists, the demand is there.
Yeah, I was going to add one thing to that made me think of it. Like, you're exactly right in how there are things in place that were not before. And one of the things that I've noticed is looking at some of the businesses who made that pivot after the pandemic. It's interesting that a lot of times the ones who were most successful may not have even been the ones that pre-pandemic were actually all that into digital. And some of the ones that had a more thought out digital strategy in some cases have been slower to adapt. Like one anecdotal example, I had a conversation with a person a while back, and she was talking about two different businesses that she frequented before the pandemic. One was a massage business where she would go in for like a weekly massage. And so that business has her name. They've got like all her contact information. They know her by name, by sight. So like pretty deep relationship with that business, goes there all the time. The other business was a restaurant, a family-run restaurant that while she knew them, it was also very old school. Like she might have even been paying with cash. Like, you go in, you leave, you don't leave much of a digital trail back then. And she talked about how after the pandemic hit, it was interesting that the restaurant like jumps into action and they start a little email list and they start sending out newsletters saying, hey, we're going to do to go. We're going to do delivery. They started doing cooking classes like online, just because they knew people
that excites me a lot.
Connection. But the massage place didn't send anything to her at all. And so I thought that was interesting that here was a business that it's not even like you'd say, well, gosh, we're not a very digital business. Well, we can't adapt. Like actually, it really is all about first mover and willing to embrace the new world. And you got to think when things do get back to some semblance of normal, that restaurant's going to be set up really well. And they'll probably continue a lot of those digital things.
Yeah, of course. And again, I think that just comes back to, this is the ebbs and flows of running any size business. But the benefit, I will say, to those creative business owners out there is you have the ability to be more flexible. Yeah. Right? You're not having to steer a giant, corporate entity, right? Yeah. You have that advantage. It is an advantage that you can take advantage of being nimble. And that's another place where software advice can come in and help you out to be like, how can I even be more nimble by implementing a particular software solution? So you've had this diverse career background. I want to ask you, because I think this is an interesting question. A lot of the types of content I talk about is entrepreneurial journey and small business journey. What's something you will never do again?
I mean,
keep it PG. Keep it PG.
There's a long list of
keep
things.
It PG-13.
We've all made mistakes in life. There's a lot we never do again. Well, that's a great question. So I'll explain where my head's at with this, and I think I can actually tie this back into because I think about this ultimately in the role at Software Advice. So this is actually proven by data. If you go ask people, like, what is the worst customer experience that you have? Of all the things, like, is it going to the dentist to get teeth pulled, or like whatever? And almost always the number one thing people just loathe as an experience is buying a car from a car dealership. And that is something that I will never do again after a couple of experiences I've had recently with buying through an online business. But if you think about that car buying experience, at least for me, like, I just did not enjoy it at all. You feel like there's all this information asymmetry. You're walking onto a lot. You've tried to do research, but sometimes even then it can be real, like, kind of obfuscate like what pricing even means. Like, yep. There's a great Seinfeld about this too, where Putty,
the undercoating.
Yeah, the undercoating. Yeah,
the undercoating.
You know what that is. It's
you're gonna want the undercoating.
It's a really painful process. You always leave it and you just go, I don't know if I got a good deal. I probably got ripped off. You kind of feel like you're getting sold to, which is not always fun. And I used one of these online experiences to purchase a car, and it was a dream. It was so much better and solved so many of those things in that it approached it from like my perspective. Everything was online. You never have to interact with in a high pressure situation. You can talk to people if you like, but it's not high pressure. You get a real clear view of the car, and the pricing is crystal clear. Now, is it the absolute cheapest? Probably not. Like, probably if you wanted to go to a lot, negotiate or do something, but the process is seamless. And they solve things like, some people would say, well, goodness, you're gonna buy a car, you want to see it, you want to drive it, you want to do these things. It seems weird to buy something that you haven't even seen. And the way this business gets around it is you get a 7-day, money back guarantee. They drop the car off and you can drive it for 7 days. And if you just decide, I don't like the car, they take it away. And it was a great experience. And I bought my last 2 cars.
Yeah, you really doubled down.
Yeah, I really doubled down. And I think about it all the time, because when you think about the business that you might be starting and your audience, Ross, of creatives, like, it's easy sometimes to think, I want to build something, I want to build a business like Tesla that like people just love and they're obsessed with how great my product is. It is a pure joy for them to use at all times. Or Apple, or like, think of those great brands that just deliver those types of experiences. But I think there's also a ton of value in focusing on a process that is just incredibly painful and annoying and making it simply not suck. And by doing that, you can get a lot of business. And sometimes I know when small businesses are looking at software, like, it can be overwhelming. You go look at like you're looking for a CRM and you're like, God, there's 100 of them. Like, mm-hmm. I don't know how to distinguish between them, which ones have features that they need for me. And it can just be overwhelming, where there's a lot of information there for you, but it's hard to make sense of. And so sometimes I think about our role, and when what our advisors do is can take a process that can be painful, that can be complex, and demystify it and actually simplify it, and do that in such a way that it's not high pressure, because it's a free service. We simply want to make a great match for you. And so I think about that a lot, but it's just something I'll never do again. I've thought, like, I don't see any reason why I'll ever set foot at a car dealership again. It's too good of an experience over here digitally. And I just feel like 5 years ago, you'd have said, are people going to be buying?
That would have been, practically unheard of. Right. It would have been. And I think, the demystifying, I think, is a huge component to it. I was in a coaching session yesterday. I was talking with a client, and I was talking like, there's a real challenge that you have, and many people have, of having to present yourself as an expert to people who don't know anything about the topic.
Right.
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 And I think that gets born more out of trust than, you have to cross that hurdle of trust factors. Right. And I just think that when you're a small business owner, whether you have one or you're thinking on one, I work with so many who are at the very beginning stage. And my roadmap sessions program is a marketing content plan program that I built. And what it does is it helps to, just like you said, like demystify, and it helps them to, get started and understand, okay, I don't spend a lot of time on competition. And I think a lot of people, when they start, they're obsessed with competition. And I say, no, spend more time figuring out who you are, what problems you solve, whose problems are you solving? Who are they? Right? That's where you'll have your wins. If you can figure that out, and if you can get your foothold there, competition, I'm not going to say becomes irrelevant, but it becomes less concerning. I have a client, founder of Urban Betty, Shelly Neff. I'm totally, she said, step into your power. And I always loved that. So I bring this up because, again, it's just about things that I think even my own audience should never do again. Obsess over competition. No, if you're going to obsess over anything, obsess over you. Obsess over the things you can control. So I have one last question for you. And I want to know, in your world, whether it be personal or business, what absolutely excites you right now? What kind of gets you pumped? What gets you up in the morning?
Yeah.
Fire away.
It's a great, I'm honestly, like Ross, I'm excited about a lot of things right now. It's been a very difficult season for us, obviously, but I feel like there's reason for optimism in our businesses, in our lives. Like I'm optimistic and super excited to hopefully see us beat the pandemic and to be around people again and to just do that, to get back to some semblance of normal life, even though I think it's going to be different. But one of the things I think about from a business perspective, and you alluded to this earlier, I really think that we are going to have Cambrian explosion, if you will, of new businesses. And I don't just mean startups, although that is one of them, right? Like I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of venture-backed startups, things like that, but more like an explosion of small businesses. There's things like the Small Business Administration, here in the United States, they've got a loan program. In some cases, they'll even make some of those payments for you. Like they're really encouraging small businesses to start. There's been, we already talked about this, just a massive shift in behavior where I think there is sort of the barriers to entry to starting or buying a business have never been lower. And I really do think I'm optimistic about the broader economic recovery that we're going to see as we I think there's a lot of just pent up demand that once we start to really get over the pandemic, there's going to be a lot of economic activity. And so I just really think we're going to look back and say, like, wow, there were just major businesses created during this time. And again, not just startups, but but small businesses as well. And so I kind of think the sky's the limit.
Interesting you bring that up, because I want to speak from my own experience. When you are a creative business owner, entrepreneur, the saying is true. You have high highs and you have low lows.
Yeah.
And if you can ride in the middle for a good amount of time, lucky you, right? But it's a lot of high highs and low lows. And, to pull the curtain back a little, I've had low lows for the last couple months.
Yeah.
But I try to be an optimist, and I try not to let those things be an albatross around my neck. And I also know, and I also trust that what comes from those low lows is oftentimes.
Yeah.
And I've talked about mental health a lot on my podcast, tripodpodcast.com, if you haven't checked that out before. But I think that, if you are in that low, staying confident, there's a reason why I tell people keep pedaling, keep working at it. I just wanted to bring that in as an added point to what you're saying, where, coming out of this difficult economic, more than economic, all aspects of life affected, period.
That's right.
With hopefully a scale up.
It's a really great point. And I think one of the things I've seen and even experienced in my own life is when you hit those low lows, they can be very difficult. But it's sometimes when you get out of them, you can look back on them and see some of the good that came from it. And sometimes it can be clarifying in a business when you go through a really challenging time, because it just forces you to really think, what is our value proposition and how do we deliver it? If I go back to the example I gave earlier on the restaurant that adapted so quickly in the pandemic, I haven't talked to them, but I have to imagine if I asked that restaurant owner before the pandemic, what is your product? I would imagine that person would tell me it's food, right? Our product is, I make food, I put it on the table, you pay me money, that's the business. If you ask them now, what is your product? I think they would probably tell you that they realized going through that their product was in some ways themselves and the kind of joy they spread by cooking that food, which now they've built an audience. You have people that just owned a restaurant, but they've got an audience now that watches their cooking lessons and subscribes to their newsletters. And so I think going through that really difficult time actually led them to reevaluate what their entire business is. And I'm sure they're still going to sell a lot of plates of food, but I think they may end up with a far more sustainable long-term business after going through that challenge. And I think there's just a lot of businesses that are going to be like that either wildly transition to something totally different or get started brand new because they're able to see the opportunity in all of this shift in behavior and systems. And it makes me think, I was going to say, we have our SCORE webinar next week where we're actually talking about what are the most successful businesses doing right now? And so I'm super excited for that, to have that discussion.
I'm also super pumped about this. So this is coming up next week, April 20th. What the most successful businesses are doing in 2021, trends you want to jump on now. The link is in the description of this video, no matter where you're watching. Register now. We just had kind of like a production planning meeting, and there are a lot of people showing up for this. And we're doing a little role reversal on this one, right?
That's right.
You're going to be moderating. So any cruelty that I've done to you here will be paid back to me. I think that was what you told me actually in advance of doing this. You said,
I told you that privately, but yes.
Yeah, I'm going to air it now so that there's evidence for when I get grilled, on this actual event. Yeah, it's April 20th. Again, the link is in the description for this video, no matter where you're watching it. If you're watching it on the YouTubes, if you're watching it on the Facebook, check it out, register, sign up. That's going to be awesome. And we're talking about, as you can see here, and I'll read it out, you and SCORE and teaming up with SCORE brought a lot of information and research to the table about small, mid-sized businesses.
Right.
And what they're doing. Do you want to talk just a little bit about that and a little bit about this event?
Yeah. So we've partnered with SCORE, which we think is just a wonderful organization. And it's really, look, the goal of it is to help. And that's why I think it really aligns with our mission. We want to help small businesses understand, we want to bring together everything that SCORE has and software advice to help small businesses right now understand where they should be investing, where opportunities are, how to move fast. So I think it'll be really impactful. SCORE's a great organization, and I think they do a lot for the small business community. So we want to join with them and do our part and hopefully provide some really helpful advice and guidance for helping businesses grow. And I'm excited about it.
Yeah, very excited. I think it's an awesome partnership. I'm honored just to be a part of it, to sit there. Well, I say that now until maybe you grill me intensely, and then I'll say, not an honor at all. How could you do this to me, Blake? I thought we had an agreement. How could you? So in closing, I just want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about software advice. Where can people go if they want to learn more? What are the best paths, even if you want to, like connecting with you, fire away.
Yeah. So softwareadvice.com, is the best place to go and get started. You can learn a little bit more about how we work, and we make it super easy for you to connect to one of our advisors. Our business hours are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Central Time. So if you're on the site during those hours, we can get you connected to an advisor really quickly and get started understanding from you what your needs are. And I'm happy to have people reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. But please check us out.
Wow! Look at this list.
Everything.
Look at so. If you're wondering if they can help you, look at this list. I can't even get it all on screen. One screen. That's how massive this list is. So this is awesome. It has been a joy. Yeah, having you on, Tricycle Live. I've really enjoyed it. I hope if you're out there watching and you're a creative business owner, you will take the time to check out software advice. But also, don't forget on the 20th. Again, info is in the description below. Register and join us for that event. It's going to be different than what today is. Mm-hmm. Right. Today was, you guys know how I roll. It's a little more casual. I wanted to bring Blake so you get to know him, introduce obviously software advice, but the panel discussion is going to be much different. You're going to learn so much. We went through the PowerPoint deck this week and it's just so insightful and interesting. And I just think that whether you're actively searching or at some point you are thinking about scaling, automating, digitizing, simplifying your business, chances are software is going to be part of that. So definitely encourage you to join us there. And Blake, any last words to close on?
Ross, I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and just say thanks to your audience for joining in and participating today. This was a lot of fun. And we should do it again sometime, and definitely go sign up for the webinar too.
That's a dangerous thing. It's like letting a vampire in your house, Blake. If you invite me in, I'm never going to go away. And if you say, let's do this again, I'm going to come a knocking. So we'll see, guys. We may, we'll see Blake next week for his recurring role on my podcast and my video channel. So for everyone out there, if you are a creative business owner, or even if you're not, I encourage you, as always, to keep pedaling.
Thanks for listening to Tripod. Be sure to subscribe and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. For show notes and past episodes, go to tripodpodcast.com. Connect with Tricycle Creative on social media at Hello Tricycle, and learn more about how we can help you with your marketing at tricycle-creative.com.